We too, my friends, are already right here with you. A live broadcast from the YouTube channel 24. Iryna Uzlova and I, Mikhail Sheitelman, a political strategist. We will now talk about how some people on this planet Earth think it is important to ask the question, was there something? Was it somewhere? This is how they react to the 500 airborne lethal targets that the Russian dictator Putin launched against Ukraine on the night of June 17th. Mikhail, hello. I am sincerely glad to see you. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Hello, Iryna. Here, Donald Trump, Mikhail, did not particularly notice that there was an attack when Russian terrorists launched 440 drones and more than 30 missiles at us. 32, right? He said, yes, we need to figure it out. Kellogg's daughter chimed in again, not surprising. It's her third comment since spring. She wrote that while the West is confused, another terrible night hit Kyiv, and Putin will exploit Middle East chaos to intensify his strikes. At first I thought so too, a distraction and military play. Or maybe not, Mikhail. Unlike Trump, you surely saw how that night in Kyiv unfolded. So, is this just more of his genocidal tactics, or is he also seizing an opportunity?
Отвлечение внимания от Украины. А может и нет, Михаил. Вот вам, во-первых, я думаю, что в отличие от Трампа вы заметили, как прошла эта ночь в Киеве, как она прошла. И во-вторых, насколько вы видите, это просто продолжение геноцидной тактики Путина, или он действительно еще и пользуется моментом в довесок?
Of course I noticed it right away because it was very loud in Kyiv. Different types of shaheeds, missiles, machine guns, anti-aircraft guns, Patriots. All of this was taking off and thundering. I heard literally everything. I felt the vibrations on myself. Fortunately, we were not hit, but unfortunately, there are many dead in Kyiv. This is reality. Now, several people have already asked me, is it because Putin decided to strike right now when the G7 summit is taking place because the leaders are busy? Or is he doing it during the summit to show the Europeans that they are nobody? And so on and so forth. But by thinking in this vein, we forget about all the other strikes, and they have been carried out for 4 years now, well, 3.5 years for sure, regularly, almost on schedule. Nothing changes. This strike is no more, no less than usual. By the way, today's attack seemed smaller. Likely only 2 strategic bombers, same as before, and around 10 Calibar missiles from the fleet we already know well. This shows their reduced capabilities, but no one but us will restrain Putin. Destroying launchers is the only way to cut down the strikes. Interestingly, in Israel, the army reports daily on Iranian missile launchers destroyed, like 120 out of 360 on day 1.
И россиян больше некому, как выяснилось. Вот сколько мы уничтожим пусковых остановок, настолько и сократятся обстрелы. Поэтому я не вижу здесь никаких вторых таких причин. Кстати, вот интересно, я сейчас подумал, сравнение. В Израиле каждый день сейчас сообщает армия обороны Израиля, сколько она уничтожила пусковых установок для баллистических ракет у иранцев. И первый день сообщили, что 120 из 360 всего, которые есть.
The Israelis are already feeling reduced Iranian strike power. Only 8 missiles in the latest attacks, not hundreds. This suggests many launchers have been destroyed. Iran now launches selectively, fearing Israeli aircraft constantly patrolling overhead. Similarly, we shouldn't forget how much our forces have weakened Russian attacks by eliminating their launch systems.
Мне кажется, слегка неблагодарные нашим воинам, когда мы забываем о том, насколько снизилась интенсивность ударов благодаря уничтоженным российским носителям.
No, we are very grateful and remember, and now our colleagues from the publication have reported good news, with a link to satellite images from NTV2 from June 15th, which they have. Against the backdrop of another directive named after Putin, this news really raised the mood. The Ingalls 2 air base has become somehow empty, Mikhail. No one is flying, taking off, or taking off. They set up 2 mock-ups. Naive, we have long since figured out this tactic. They are simply not there. And now everything sounds different because there is no longer any strategic aviation of the Russian Federation at Engels 2. He knows that there are two of them because it is true that there are only two mock-ups. Yes, that is right. And when I said ungrateful, I did not mean you or myself or even the media. Perhaps I was speaking abstractly. It's just that when they ask the question, well, did they increase the shelling because... The truth is that they did not increase it and could not even increase it because the Ukrainian defense forces destroyed the carriers. The sea carriers, at least half, sank them, and the air carriers also partially. We do not know the exact percentages, but we see the result. They simply do not exist. And this is really what we should appreciate. Even the Kinzhals, there were two of them today. And you remember, at the beginning of the war, they launched 6 at a time. When, for example, Ramaphosa came, 6 Kinzhals in one salvo. And now 2. Because we also hit this Sovostaika, or whatever it's called, once, twice, 3 times. The last time we shot down 2 planes, one of them was a MiG-31, and this is far from their first loss during the war. We are gradually putting them out of action, and they don't have 100 of these MiGs. That's why they are running out of pilots and planes for these tasks. And that's not all the good news. In Crimea, in the Dzhankoy region, according to public reports, explosions are heard, and the occupiers are complaining. But frankly speaking, it seems to me that this is not enough. Crimea is precisely the place where we, by the way, are also conducting a cleanup of Russian air defense. At least, that's how military expert Roman Svitin explains it. We are talking about pinpoint strikes. As far as I understand, Mikhail, this is, of course, a question for our defense forces. They see better. But how much more regular should such strikes be, especially against the backdrop of the fact that Putin does not stop? And how much do they undermine the occupiers' confidence that Crimea is protected? They think they are protected. But if you look, wherever you spit, they are not. Although I usually say that the main goals are military, not moral. Not so that they think something, but for the sake of the result. But I simply have to tell one story about Crimea. Last year, at the Istanbul airport, a man came up to me. This happens quite often, by the way, and said, "Hello, Mikhail. I want to report to you on the situation in Crimea." He is from Crimea himself, and without going into unnecessary details, I will say that he is still there. And he said that the mood of the occupiers is constantly changing, because they constantly feel the approach of Ukraine. They bombed here, they bombed there, and they no longer have a sense of control, but a feeling that they are forced to hide, that they are just lucky to survive another night. Bravo to the armed forces of Ukraine, he said, because every day the mood of the military and their families in Crimea is changing dramatically. The civilian occupiers may not understand anything yet, but when they have to flee, the military will be the first to flee. Therefore, it is important that the Ukrainians in Crimea feel this and understand what is happening. But in general, to be honest, even that night we were all in a severe knockdown, from blows, from shots, from counting the dead and wounded. The Ukrainian Defense Forces launched 200 drones at Russian territory today, 200 in one day. We don't know the results yet, but as usual, the information is coming in with a delay. The Russians, although they haven't become smarter, have become a little more efficient. They really are limiting the dissemination of information from the sites of the strikes, so the data is getting to us more slowly and less frequently. But it still gets there. Sooner or later, we'll find out what hit where. I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow it turns out that we shot down a couple more planes, tanks, and factories, because it was a massive attack. Today there was shelling, all airfields were closed, all of Moscow, and not only was under the airspace closure regime. And there was also a powerful strike in Crimea 2 days before that at night. So, although the information is delayed, it still comes. And if you remember, a Soviet expert said, for drones to become a turning point in war, 500 drones a day are needed. Now they are already a factor. But to become decisive, you need exactly 500 on average, and not 500 one time in one night. We can do this already. On average, we have about 100 drones per night. The Russians have about 170, according to my data. and we need 500, we need it, and we are working on it. Here, viewers who clearly do not support Ukraine in the Russian-Ukrainian war are writing, saying that they called Yalta or Sudak and everything is calm. But you are calling the wrong place. Firstly, we do not know everything right away. Secondly, the Telegram channel Krymsky Veter reports that Russian air defense systems can be heard in Crimea, which have no place in the Ukrainian sky. In the Dzhankoy district, as I already mentioned, local residents confirm the sky is restless, and Russian aircraft are rushing around, flying over, including in the Bakhchisarai district. So it is possible that the strikes hit other areas. Mikhail, even such comments indicate panic among the imported civilian occupiers. In general, I have had a simple formula for a long time now. Russian commentators become active en masse on Ukrainian channels, on yours, on mine, precisely when something is burning for them.
Формулу, что, вы знаете, российские вот такие комментаторы появляются на украинских каналах, на вашем, моем, когда у них что-то подгорает.
Not them personally, no, not these specific people, but they are given orders to comment, to come to the chats precisely when there are problems. I have noticed that there are two types of such situations. The first is during great successes of the Ukrainian armed forces, when a truly powerful blow is dealt, for example, Operation Spider's Web, or when a warship is sunk or a bridge is blown up. Then especially many so-called bots appear, although in fact they are not bots, but living people hired to protect Russian positions. The second scenario is when Russia's war crimes are undeniable. Then they swarm in, working double shifts for extra pay. Otherwise, they're silent in the chats. Today is one of those days. All the victims in Kyiv were civilians. These are grave war crimes, and the ones responsible, Putin, Gerasimov, the chief of the general staff, and Koblench, the Air Force commander, are already on the international wanted list. Therefore, there is no one to announce. The variety of new commanders of the Black Sea Fleet is almost exhausted. But I want to believe that you and I will live to see that bright day when we will celebrate the same way as today in Israel. There was interesting news there. The Israelis destroyed the chief of the general staff of the Iranian army. In fact, they're Gerasimov. Yes, but there is a nuance. Similar news was already on Saturday. And this is the second? Yes, the second. I even joked about this. They appointed a new chief of the general staff, and he was destroyed literally today. It's just that today is the next chapter. To be honest, at first I thought I hadn't woken up, Mikhail. I watched it several times before I understood the whole point. It's just wonderful. Yes, such a double penetration into the Iranian military network. And if we're talking about analogs, then of course there are no analogs, but at the same time there are. The Israelis, for example, took out the Iranian president's advisor on shipbuilding. Consider it like our Patrushev. They eliminated him and another level, Gerasimov. Then they got rid of Kolokoltsev. This is the Iranian equivalent of the chief of police. In general, so far, only Putin and Patriarch Gundyayev have survived. Although Gundyayev is questionable, it seems they can't even find him, and there are already discussions about this. They mean Ayatollah Imina, but in context, in essence, it's the same thing. And also, according to rumors, Trump asked not to touch him. He, they say, likes Ayatollah Imina, although he has strange tastes in general. Putin, Gundyayev, Kamyani. And Netanyahu made a statement last night that, in general, eliminating Khamenei is a completely acceptable option. Moreover, it will not be considered an escalation of the conflict. And this is my favorite, will not be considered an escalation. So it's not an escalation if you eliminate the main person in the Iranian vertical? Well, we like that too. Now we'll continue talking about it. We've been on air for almost 15 minutes with Mikhail Sheitelman, a political strategist, and I'm Iryna Uzlova. Friends, thank you all for your kind words. Kyiv is here, Odessa is here, everyone is standing, everyone is holding on. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. Glory and thanks to all our heroes, to all our forces and people. Our sympathies are with the family and friends of those who perished as a result of the terrorist attacks on the side of the Russian Federation and dictator Putin, and our deepest gratitude to all those who suffered. and over 100 people are the legacy of yet another peaceful initiative. As it seems in Russia, they will continue to smell until the end of the Istanbul households and are ready for new rounds of relocations. And friends, subscribe to this YouTube channel now. You will marvel at us, YouTube24. And on Mikhail's YouTube, be sure to subscribe. I have been subscribed since the beginning of a large-scale war. Dear Raja to everyone, don't miss this interview and monostream. They will help you stay up to date with our topics and delve even deeper into our analytics. Please like this to help spread the conversation across YouTube, and put on food. Judging by the chat, they are actively burning there in a direct sense.
В нашу аналитику. Лайк, пожалуйста, поставьте, это поможет беседе продвигаться просторами Ютуба. И также задавайте свои вопросы. И смотрю я по чату, действительно, что просто подгорает у них вот в прямом смысле.
Kramatorsk is with us. Hello. Russian bots are swarming today, but let them burn out. Viewers joke Kundyayev's hiding from Alaudinov's bast shoes. Maybe so. Back to Iran. Bloomberg confirms what we already knew. Moscow won't help. It likely built that into the strategic deal to stay hands-off later. I discussed it with military expert David Gondelman. Moscow's pulling back again, just like with Syria. And now Peskov blames Israel, claiming a terrible escalation. But that's classic, and when things collapse, they blame others.
Чтобы вот Москва же понимает, на самом деле, все, что потом не помогает. Да и что ж не взять, грубо говоря. Насколько действительно для вас тоже ожидаемо, что Россия бросила Иран, как это было из Сирии. Во всем сегодня вышел Песков, винит Израиль. Как так можно? Какая вообще эскалация?
So, what role do you see Russia playing now, and what losses does it have in the growing confrontation between Iran and Israel? In fact, there are real debates going on among experts right now. Who exactly did not include that very clause on mutual military assistance in the cooperation agreement. Some believe that the Iranians deliberately did not include it so that they would not have to fight somewhere in the Kursk or Belgorod regions later. Some Western analysts even say that Iran has protected itself in advance. Although, honestly, I don't know who is right and who is not. But the fact is that Russia, despite all the formal statements about partnership, ultimately did not help in any way. By the way, the only time during this entire conflict Trump told the truth, neither North Korea nor Russia came to Iran's aid. This is the absolute truth. I think Iran asked to restore its air defense system, destroyed by Israeli strikes, but it was never restored.
Сегодня, что ни Северная Корея, ни Россия не пришли на помощь Ирану. Вот это чисто настоящая правда. Потому что, я думаю, иранцы просили возобновления, помочь восстановить систему ПВО, и она восстановлена не была вообще. Ну, имеется в виду та, которая уничтожена израильтянами, ее не восстановили.
And only the Russians could have done this. No one else had any extra air defense systems on hand, but it turned out that they were rotten. By the way, fresh news. Donald Trump himself said this right now. He said that Iran had good navigators and other defense equipment, and there was plenty of it, but none of it compares to American systems. Nobody does it better than the good old USA, he added. But he was talking about Iran's air defense, which is of Russian manufacture. That is, made in Russia. Russian inspectors, Russian programmers, and so on. Perhaps Trump didn't know. Most likely, he really didn't know. He would hardly have insulted Putin so directly. He always tries not to offend and is sensitive to his peace of mind. But here it turned out that he kind of openly said, Russian air defense is no good. Well, he seems to want to help, but with what? With what exactly can he help if the equipment doesn't work? But there was essentially nothing to help with. Money, it was Iran that helped the Russians, and weapons and high technology. The only thing Russia really had, and it is impossible to deny it, was air defense supplies. And, of course, nuclear technology. Although, if you look at the composition of the Iranian nuclear scientists, at least 3 of the 9 engineers killed on the first day had dissertations defended in Moscow. And now this is considered a bad omen. Do not defend your dissertation in Moscow, otherwise you will come under Israeli strikes. Honestly, I would not advise anyone to do this, so the help from Russia is very limited. You can say that they screwed us, or you can say that there was simply nothing to help with. But what is really interesting is the story with the negotiations. I mean, Putin's attempts to act as a mediator, this was also expected as help, like he will join in, he will turn on. And Trump even asked for this, like I personally asked Putin to be a mediator. And first Macron said, "This war criminal cannot be a mediator. Are you crazy?" And today Peskov is already complaining that Israel does not want to talk to us at all and says that it does not need mediators and does not strive for any peace. What a bummer. This is a real bummer. They just wanted to show Trump that they can still do something. But it turned out that there is no one to be able with. The Russians have no partner for negotiations, just a treasure trove for headlines. Putin dumped Iran, Israel brushed Putin off. This, in fact, was the only thing Putin could offer as practical proof of his importance. He was also pitching this to Trump during the negotiations after Operation Spiderweb, and most likely, even when Trump called to congratulate him on his birthday, he offered his role as a mediator. Everything failed. How can Putin be interesting to Trump now? Or is this purely irrational love and adoration? Here's our problem. Trump, unlike you and me, is not at all rational.
Вот, у нас есть с вами большая беда, к сожалению, что в отличие от нас с вами, Трамп не является человеком рациональным.
He thinks in some categories unknown to us, and yes, at least he certainly does not judge by the result. Well, if he focused on the result, then probably Vitkov would not work for him, a man who failed negotiations on 3 fronts at once, with Hamas, with Iran, and with Moscow. All 3 were a failure, and he is still a special representative for who knows what. And where are Trump's achievements then? He is not at all embarrassed by the lack of results. Therefore, the fact that Putin does not give out anything does not embarrass him, and that the negotiations ended in nothing does not embarrass him. And even the prospect that Putin is about to sign something somewhere does not cause him any doubts either. He has a memory like, what is this fish called? Guppy guppy. Yes, he wakes up, and that's it. The day begins anew. A happy man, really. Who is that German who drives me crazy? Alzheimer's, Grandma, Alzheimer's, yes. Let me ask again. And here it is, both funny and bitter, Mikhail. This is a catastrophe, Iryna, a catastrophe. You and I live on a planet where the most powerful country in the world is ruled by someone. The biggest country in the world, well, let it be the second largest in terms of economy, the first in terms of military strength, the 18th in terms of industrial strength, maybe, I don't remember exactly, but it doesn't matter, and the first in terms of technology, is ruled by someone who can't string a couple of words together, can't follow a logical chain from point A to point B, can't finish a sentence, can't remember what he said yesterday. And the whole world lives guessing at coffee grounds, trying to guess what Trump wants. He wants nothing, you just have to admit it. He's not interested in peace, friendship with Putin, or enmity. Why did he run away from the G7? It's because. It always sounds like it's because he's up to something. But in fact, he's not up to anything. And look what happened tonight. We'll get to Macron, that's a big story, yes, yes. But before we do, I want to say a word or two about the G7 escape. Because when it happened, Trump became like Yanukovych, a runaway president who ran away to nowhere. There's no catching up with us. Yanukovych style, go try to catch up, go find out where he is in Rostov, at the bottom.
Но нас не догонят. Янукович попробуй догони. Поди знай, где там в Ростове искать. На дне.
It's true. And by the way, remember I'm crazy, I need her? That's from the same place, isn't it? Yes, yes, almost the same song, another track by the same band. I honestly didn't sleep tonight, not because of Trump's runaway, although you could call it runaway brides. I was awake because of the gunshots and explosions outside, sitting online, watching the news. At the same time, I was watching Sex and the City. I don't know why I'm saying this, I just somehow talk about it all the time. So I'm reading the news, and I can feel the atmosphere starting to wind up. Everything says there's going to be a nuclear war. I'm serious. It felt like it was about to start. Some people started writing about it, others, Telegram channels, tweets, politicians, and I'm sitting here thinking, with whom, I mean? Who is going to wage a nuclear war with whom? Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons it can't attack. Israel, why would it drop nuclear bombs on Iran?
Я такой сижу, думаю, а кого с кем-то, в смысле? Ну, кого с кем ядерная война будет? Типа, у Ирана нет ядерного оружия, он напасть не может. Израиль, что нападет на ядерную бомбу, сбросит на Иран, зачем?
He can drop conventional bombs, why nuclear bombs? The Americans will start a nuclear war. With whom? That was the question. And that's the panic that started it. Over what? Because of what Trump did. Because Trump ran away from the G7. The man simply left the summit of world leaders, where they discussed real, huge problems. The war in Iran and the war between Russia and Ukraine, sanctions and everything else. And he claims he has better things to do. Obviously not night golf, right? And everybody's like, yeah, that's it. He's going to start a nuclear war. And then he posted a tweet at the end. Not the Macron tweet, that was in the morning. The first tweet was, evacuate Tehran immediately. We've seen that, haven't we? If you're a sane person and not Donald Trump, you immediately think the President of the United States rushes to Washington with the words, I have urgent business, and orders the evacuation of Tehran. What the hell is he up to? Why? And you start to compare it to reality, unlike him. And there are 13 million people in Tehran. To evacuate 13 million from a huge city with limited gasoline and transportation is actually impossible.
Он что задумал-то? Зачем? Значит, а главное, ты все это начинаешь сопоставлять с реальностью, в отличие от Трампа, и понимаешь, что в Тегеране 13 миллионов жителей. 13 миллионов. Эвакуировать 13 миллионов человек из большого города, учитывая, что количество автомобилей и бензина физически ограничено, да?
This task is at least a couple months away. Evacuating 13 million people from Tehran. Where are they supposed to go? To the desert and eat ashes or wait for manna from heaven? And against this backdrop, a real global panic has begun. Until the morning today, the world lived in anxiety. There is about to be a nuclear strike. And then it became clear Trump is just making his tweets. He's just tweeting and tweeting day and night. I'm sitting here thinking, it's nighttime in America and he's still tweeting. First, Tucker Carlson reappeared, then the statement that Iran should not have nuclear weapons, and then the final chord, an appeal to Macron, saying that Macron doesn't understand anything and thinks stupidly. This is the world we live in. The United States is run by a man who ran away from the G7 summit, and I think it was from Macron. Because Macron came for a reason. He had proposals, and quite possibly tough demands.
Потому что Макрон вчера приехал не просто так, не с пустыми руками. Он приехал с предложениями и требованиями, я думаю, на этот саммит.
Because, actually, Trump promised Macron in the presence of 4 witnesses that he would impose sanctions against Russia on May 12th. At that time, when they called from Kyiv on the phone that was on the table, all this was said, and it was said, we will announce sanctions together. And then, remember, they called from Albania, and then we were also 4 or 5, if you count Zelensky, at the summit of the countries of Northern and United Europe. And then Trump again confirmed that there would be sanctions on May 12th with the Europeans together. And the result? Nothing. He just ditched Macron and the rest of Europe. And Macron went to present and presented. Demanded a real conversation, not this rhetoric in the spirit of, if I were president, it is no longer relevant. Because if Trump were really president, the war between Iran and Israel wouldn't have happened. But Trump is not president, and who is he now anyway? So the war started. And Macron, together with the Europeans, I think, prepared a systematic package of proposals, essentially a barter. We recognize Israel's right to self-defense, and we demand that Iran disarm and dismantle its nuclear program. This is what was formalized in the G7 paper, where there was not the slightest condemnation of Israel. A paper that Trump, by the way, refused to sign. So he ran away at once because he realized that the next step would be sanctions against Russia. And he doesn't want that, so he left, avoiding a direct and honest conversation with Macron and the Europeans. Unlike Macron's wife, Brigitte Macron, who, maybe jokingly, maybe seriously, sometimes even slaps Macron in the face. And Trump is apparently much more afraid of him. Yes, he did. Iryna, here's what I think is our trouble. We have a U.S. president, and not a self-proclaimed one, but a really elected one, not Lukashenko. And he is afraid to be among normal, living people, where he is not alone, where he can be asked a question, and he cannot choose what to answer and what not to answer. Do you understand how he lives? Why is he not on Twitter but on his own separate social network? Because there are no competitors there, he is alone. If he wants, he writes. If he wants, he deletes it. No one can make a repost because there is no one. There are almost no other users there. No one will write a comment because there's no one to write to. And that's it. He's alone, always alone on stage, untouchable, like on TV. That's the whole point. When he hosted his show on TV, no one could say a word against him. He was the owner, the producer. Everything was under his control, in his building, on his set. I mean the show, The Candidate. Now it's the same thing, only from the White House. Whatever he wants, he'll write on Twitter whatever he says. That's what will happen. And if he doesn't like a question from the Washington Post, CNN, or Atlantic, he simply says, "Your publication has no reputation. I won't talk to you." That's his whole policy. But when he's with real peers, Milley, Starmer, Macron, Mertz, Carney, even Canada's PM, arm-waving and theatrics don't work. Unlike with Putin, where he can relax and perform, these leaders demand real talks. Do we impose sanctions tomorrow? Set oil at 45? Nobody cares if you're friends with Putin or trust his intentions.
Не надо рассказывать, что ты дружишь с Путиным, что у тебя прекрасные отношения, что вот с минуты на минуту Путин заключит мир, и что ты веришь в его честные намерения.
We're not interested in that. Tweet your bullshit on your Twitter. We're dealing with real issues here, and that's what he ran away from. Not from Macron, but from the truth and from people who can talk to him on an equal footing. Because in the White House, of course, no one can do that. And we don't like to be alone. We always have people. The best people, those who are watching us, watching Michael, me. Thank you, friends, for being with us, and there are already more than 10,000 of you. We feel you, your support. It always works as our motivation, as a charge of our mood, no matter what, because the little bald bunker ghoul won't wait for us to give up. No matter how much pain and destruction it brings, we will endure and we will have our revenge. Please subscribe to YouTube 24, to Michael's channel, put likes. It's quick, easy, and to the point. By the way, can I interrupt you for a second? I just had a thought, and I have to say it, or I will forget it. I'm not even talking about subscribing to the channel right now, by the way, although that's certainly a valuable thing. Subscribe, of course. But that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about the fact that Trump can't find himself in a situation where there are his equals around him, those who are capable of talking to him as equals. That's why he ran away from the G7. Remember another moment when they tried to talk to him in a real human way? It was at the White House when Zelensky arrived on February 28th. It happened again. Zelensky spoke to Trump as an equal without playing along, and Trump couldn't handle it. Same with the G7. Both times he walked out. He can't bear equal footing. And this comparison, Mikhail, is brilliant. I'm keeping it. We're once again talking about equality, respect, and strength. As we discussed with political strategist Taras Zagorodny, Trump only responds to force. That's why we must step up arms supplies and strike Russian targets. Oil refineries, infrastructure. Just kidding. Or maybe that's the nudge Donald Fredovich needs.
Бить по России не думать, НПЗ, ПЗН, ну это я шучу, конечно, то есть все, выносить им. И как раз это таки может того же Дональда Фредовича мотивировать, чтобы давать нам больше.
Not to give, to sell, yes, okay, to sell to us, to sell to Europe. But does it work for him? The language of force? He usually runs away from it, but here it's different. A show of force against a serious rival. Israel, for example, has put all its aircraft in the sky, the Pentagon has confirmed it, and everything is being pulled to the Middle East. And we see Israel gets help when it shows strength. Can the same scenario work for Ukraine? First of all, I'm afraid we may not have enough resources. We are fighting Russia, not Iran. With Iran, I think, With our current army, we would have coped with Iran long ago, only in a different way, not like Israel, but by land. But we have a different approach. Does this logic even work in the case of Trump? The main thing is to understand what we want from him. This is the key question. Sell weapons? Good. Well, sell weapons. The scheme works like this. If you don't sell, we'll keep bombing airfields, or sell, and maybe we'll do less. It's like an ultimatum, isn't it?
Продавай оружие. То есть давай так, если ты не продашь нам оружие, мы сотрем Москву в порошок. Такой ультиматум, да? Продолжим бомбить аэродромы, или продай нам оружие, или мы будем бомбить аэродромы.
Logical connections, cause and effect, cognitive, you know what I mean. By the way, I have been thinking about this today, and I will give you the clearest example. First, let me say at once, in Israel's war against Iran, I am on Israel's side, to make it clear. So, look how interesting it is. Trump says to Iran, "You have no right to nuclear weapons, you should have made a deal with us." He says, "I offered you 60 days to sign the deal so you wouldn't have weapons." So he's trying to get them not to have them. And if you want to have them, we will bomb you for it. And so Iran is being bombed. With the Israelis, the Americans are debating whether it is worth it or not. Now let's take Ukraine. The Americans also said to us, "Give up your nuclear weapons, make a deal." We gave them up, made a deal, and what happened? We're being bombed too. It turns out that if you listen to the Americans, you get bombed. If you don't listen, you get bombed too. It's a stalemate, don't you think? The same scenario in the end, a strange symmetry.
Послушаешь ты американцев, тебя будут бомбить. Не послушаешь, тебя будут бомбить. То есть как бы безвыходно как-то, нет, звучит?
Да, действительно, тоже. Сценарий один и тот же в итоге выходит.
Donald Trump, you're right. It's stitching up so much that I just don't have time to save and output everything. Yes, it's a new quote. You've voiced it, and I just like the one. I've already shown the verse about Russian air defense. And now Trump writes, "We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He's an easy target, but he's safe there, and we're not going to take him out." It's clear that this is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei we're talking about. Withdraw, of course, means eliminate. Trump apparently decided to make it clear, just in case, that that's what he's talking about, at least for now. He adds, "We don't want missiles flying at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is running out." And immediately following is another post in big letters, "Unconditional surrender." Unconditional surrender. Apparently it's Iran again. But how does it expect to achieve it? Is Iran ready for such a surrender? Or will it still have to deal with the current political leadership somehow? Because everyone is rightly asking the question, if he is not removed, what will change at all? Like the Kremlin, their atom is unchanged, and so is their will to rearm. Oh, and to end the Trump discussion, it would be curious to see if he even realizes the meaning of the words unconditional surrender. Does he realize that it's a term from World War II? Because, for example, it means that Israeli troops can enter Tehran, appoint a new government with no reservations, or take back part of Iran's territory if they want to. This is the essence of unconditional surrender. What we want, we do. Like with Germany, they took Königsberg, gave part of it to Poland, something to Slovakia, something to Hungary and France. And here you get the impression that Trump doesn't know what he means at all. Especially with these formulations like, "We know where he is, but we won't kill him yet. We'll wait until better times." We've heard this many times, and it all sounds alarming. Maybe they won't wait with the civilian population. Let's shift the focus to Iran and see what happens there. Because if we leave them, as you rightly said, things will continue. Israel is now at a fork in the road. It has not yet come, but it will come in the coming weeks.
Если сейчас, то Израиль сейчас развилка. Она еще не наступила, она наступит через пару недель.
Should we continue the war until the overthrow of the regime or limit ourselves to demilitarization? Yes, that's exactly the fork in the road right now. Either demilitarize, stop bombing, say, "That's it, we've demilitarized," and Iran will stop shooting for a while, sign a ceasefire agreement, or something formal. That's one scenario. The second is to keep bombing until we topple the regime, destroying television, infrastructure, and so on. This is not an issue for now. It will come up later, when the obvious military targets on Iranian territory are over, and it becomes clear whether America will supply new weapons or do something more radical. Now let's look at the same dilemma through the eyes of Iran, or more precisely, the Khamenei regime. From their perspective, a good scenario is for them to be demilitarized, knocked out of their military industry, but then left alone. That's an acceptable option, and the bad scenario is if the regime is overthrown, some Shah is brought in, or God forbid, democracy is established, that would be a disaster for them. And if in the good option Israel simply demilitarizes and leaves, then the Ayatollah can stay in peace. He has been sitting for a long time, there were only two of them. After Khomeini, there was Khamenei, and that's it.
Вот действительно, Израиль демилитаризовал и оставил в покое. Сидит такой Айталла, а он сидит давно. Их всего два было, вот, по-моему, да? То есть после Хабиини сразу Хаменеи, и все на этом.
And this Ayatollah, the first or the second, for 45 years has been telling the Iranian people that they should be patient and tighten their belts because we are about to build a weapon that will blow Israel to hell, and then we will finally celebrate victory. It doesn't matter if it's nuclear or not. The holy goal is the main thing. Now, what are they supposed to say? We've been belt tightening for 45 years. We've almost reached the target, but everything is destroyed. Be patient for another 45 years, and we will return to the level we were at on July 12, 2025. And there, maybe by 2070, we will create the atomic bomb again. So, 3 generations will have to tighten their belts again. That doesn't work. The regime's program itself is disappearing. After all, the program was, we are building a super army, a mega power, investing in education, engineering, everything to defeat Israel. And so they built it all, and it didn't work. And now what? What's the next course? What to offer the public? I don't see how they will be able to hold on to power because restarting the same project with the same slogans won't work.
Чтобы победить Израиль. Вот они все это сделали, и не получилось. А теперь-то что, куда идти? В чем тогда их новая программа? Вот им будет так тяжело удержать власть. Я думаю, что просто невозможно удержать власть, когда ты решаешь второй раз попытаться сделать то же самое.
It's like if Putin was overthrown and some Konurikov or Dmitriev came in and said, let's build an army again and finally defeat Ukraine. We will spend the next 20 years preparing hard to finally take Kharkov. Seriously, I don't think even the Russians would support such a thing. Another 20 years of belt tightening for the sake of Isakievs and Kharkovs? It's too familiar a story. And here is an interesting question in this context. Is it possible that Trump would authorize the complete elimination of Iran's political top brass? Netanyahu seemed to deny it, but who knows what was really in those conversations? And what if he does? Will it make things easier for Israel? I think Israel will make its own decision anyway without looking at Trump, especially since he has already given his go-ahead in general. But technically, it is not easy to eliminate Khamenei. He is sitting somewhere deep underground, so try to get to him. Even Sheikh Nasrallah could not be reached for years, so it is not so much a matter of political will as of real capabilities. The head of Hezbollah could not be reached for years because he was just a shadow of the Iranian company, and finally they got him. With Khamenei, theoretically, it could be the same. But that's only one aspect of it. The second is that Khamenei's removal does not automatically mean the end of the Islamic Republic of Iran. For it to truly cease to exist, the system itself must be destroyed, not just its face. After all, Gaddafi was overthrown in Libya not because a shovel was shoved in his face, but because by that time there was nothing left of his regime. Similarly with Saddam Hussein, his regime fell before he was hanged, and he was caught a couple of years later. If Ayatollah Khamenei hides in the mountains of Tabriz for decades to come, but the system is already destroyed, he won't bother anyone. The point is not about him, but about the structure of power. Is it necessary to do it with bombs? Let's see. In Libya, it was possible to demolish the model of governance in this way. Whether it will be repeated in Iran is an open question. We'll see. And, Mikhail, in conclusion, a bow to the conversation. We will now show a video from our colleagues from RBC Ukraine. It appeared during the broadcast. According to the source, the Russian vessel Adalynn is on fire in the Arabian Sea. Well, it's burning. That's good. I couldn't help but look at it. I couldn't help myself. This vessel was flying the flag of Antigua and Barbuda. Earlier, Ukraine officially put it on the sanctions list as part of the so-called shadow, but obvious and simply illegal fleet of the Russian Federation. So much for sanctions in action, as they say. The bark is old, rusty, environmentally dangerous. Well, it caught fire, so you never know what it is and who caused it. But such incidents, it seems to me, should be the form of sanctions against the shadow fleet, and not just nominal lists, which they quietly bypass outside the territorial waters. There is a problem, but it is also solved. Sometimes like this, spontaneous combustion, let's say. And your bow, as you called it, could be even more spectacular if it turns out that it was the Iranians who struck. After all, they threatened oil shipping and said they would start hitting tankers if Israeli aggression didn't stop. And where is all this happening? That's right, in the Sea of Oman. And that's where Iran has promised to block shipping. It makes sense. I took this particularly keenly because yesterday I was listening to Mr. Krutikin. You know, there is such an expert on Iran. Yes, and he was just talking about the Strait of Oman, right about the very place that Iran has promised to stop shipping there militarily, and that it's Omani territorial waters, and how that could end up if they do decide to. And lo and behold, I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that it was an Iranian missile. I think the next time we meet, we'll bring this up again if it turns out that it was indeed an Iranian missile. And how we will then mock them all. Well, deservedly so, we are always realistic. And what about Russia? Nothing. It's technically the flag of Antigua and Barbuda, not their ship, officially. Well, someone rented it, we don't know who, no one knows anything, no one has anything to do with it. And who should we claim against? No one really insures these vessels under sanctions, so there is no one to turn to. I think Operation Web 3.0 has already started. Sounds beautiful, by the way. There you go. The Black Widow is already here, and I don't mean me. Although, who knows? Just kidding, of course. Mikhail, thank you very much. It was powerful. That's what I mean by bow, not what you said. As one of my colleagues said, Ira, you are not a Black Panther today. Well, let it be so. Although for Russians, I'm always the Black Widow. Haha. Be afraid. And don't sleep. I may come too. Mikhail, thank you again for a wonderful conversation, humorous, but at the same time more than professional. See you soon in less than a week in our English language format. Have a good day. Thank you, Iryna. Goodbye. That was political technologist Mikhail Sheitelman, and I'm Iryna Uzlova. Thanks to the 11,000 plus viewers who joined us live on the 24th. Share your thoughts in the comments. We're sure you have something to add, and don't forget to like the video to help spread the conversation. Take care. See you soon, and we will win.